The rain poured relentlessly as Daniel Morgan sat alone in his car, parked outside his suburban home. His hands trembled as he clutched the phone, rereading the message that had shattered his world. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. Please don't hate me." It was from Lily, his wife of 7 years, the woman he had trusted with everything. Just hours earlier, she had kissed him goodbye, smiling as she left for her weekly book club. Now, Daniel knew there was no book club. It had started innocently enough. A friend's offhand comment at a barbecue, something about seeing Lily at a downtown cafe when she was supposed to be at work. Daniel had brushed it off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the past month, strange things had begun to add up. The sudden late nights, the vague excuses, the overly cheerful demeanor that seemed almost forced. But Daniel had ignored it, trusting her implicitly. After all, Lily wasn't just his wife. She was his best friend. They had built a life together, a beautiful home, a close-knit circle of friends, dreams of a family. It was a bond he thought was unbreakable. Until tonight. A shocking discovery. Daniel's heart pounded as he sat at the dining table earlier that evening, staring at Lily's laptop. She had left it open, her social media account still logged in. He hadn't planned to snoop. He wasn't that kind of husband. But a notification had popped up, drawing his attention. It was a message from someone named Jason Carter. "Miss you already. Can't wait for Friday night." Winking-faced Daniel froze, the casual intimacy of the message sending a chill down his spine. His hands moved on their own, clicking on the chat history. What he found left him breathless. The messages spanned months, late-night conversations filled with flirtation, longing, and inside jokes he didn't understand. Jason wasn't just anyone. He was a coworker of Lily's, someone she had mentioned in passing as part of her team. Daniel's stomach churned as he read further. The messages detailed secret rendezvous, plans to meet at hotels, and even moments of reflection where Lily expressed guilt for deceiving her husband. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," one message read. "He's such a good man, but I can't help how I feel about you." The words were a dagger to Daniel's heart. Confrontation or caution? Daniel's first instinct was to call her, to demand answers. But as he reached for his phone, a part of him hesitated. The betrayal was raw, but he needed clarity, proof that would leave no room for denial. He decided to wait. He had to know the full truth, even if it destroyed him. A night that changed everything. Later that night, Lily returned home, her hair slightly damp from the rain, a faint scent of perfume lingering as she set her bag down by the door. "Hey, you're still up?" she asked, smiling warmly as she walked over to kiss his cheek. Daniel forced a smile, his stomach in knots. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." "How was the book club?" "It was great," she replied casually, slipping out of her heels. "We're reading that new mystery novel I told you about. You'd love it." The ease with which she lied sent a wave of anger crashing through him. He wanted to confront her right there, but he held back, his mind racing with what to do next. The plan takes shape the following day. Daniel decided to take action. He reached out to a friend, Matt, who worked in private security. Matt was the kind of guy who didn't ask questions, someone Daniel trusted to handle delicate matters discreetly. "I need your help," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I think Lily is having an affair." Matt didn't hesitate. "Say no more. I'll get to work." Within days, Matt provided Daniel with what he needed: photos, receipts, and timestamps that confirmed everything. Lily and Jason had been meeting regularly at a boutique hotel downtown, often during the hours she claimed to be at work. One photo in particular stuck with Daniel. Lily and Jason standing close in a dimly lit parking lot, her hand resting on his chest as they laughed together. It was an intimacy Daniel hadn't seen in years, and it broke him. A calculated confrontation. Daniel decided it was time to confront Lily, but not without a plan. He wanted answers, not excuses, not denials. That evening, he prepared dinner, setting the table as if it were a normal night. When Lily arrived home, she seemed surprised by the gesture. "This is nice," she said, smiling nervously. "What's the occasion?" Daniel poured her a glass of wine, his own untouched. "I thought we could talk," he said evenly. Lily's smile faltered. "Talk about what?" Daniel took a deep breath, sliding the photos across the table. "About this." Her face went pale as she stared at the evidence, her hands trembling. "Daniel, don't lie to me, Lily," he interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "I want the truth. All of it." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked away, the weight of her guilt evident. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." Daniel's jaw tightened. "How long?" 6 months, she admitted, her voice barely audible. 6 months, he repeated, his chest tightening. 6 months of lies. 6 months of you looking me in the eye and pretending everything was fine. "I didn't know how to stop," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "You didn't just hurt me, Lily. You destroyed everything we built." The aftermath that night, Daniel slept in the guest room, unable to bear the thought of being near her. As he stared at the ceiling, his mind raced with questions. How had he missed the signs? Why hadn't he confronted her sooner? But beneath the pain, a new feeling began to take shape: resolve. Lily's betrayal had shattered him, but he wasn't going to let it define him. If she thought she could walk away from their life and move on without consequences, she was wrong. As Daniel drifted into a restless sleep, a plan began to form. This wasn't just about Lily and Jason anymore. It was about reclaiming his life on his terms. The betrayal sat heavy on Daniel's chest like a lead weight, but his resolve hardened with each passing day. Lily's confession had torn open wounds that couldn't simply heal with time. He wasn't just grieving his marriage. He was grappling with the humiliation and loss of trust. But Daniel wasn't going to drown in self-pity. If Lily and Jason thought they could walk away unscathed, they were about to learn otherwise. A cold morning, a new mission. The sun rose on a chilly Monday morning as Daniel sat at his desk, staring at the dossier Matt had compiled. Photos, videos, timestamps, enough evidence to make anyone squirm. Jason Carter wasn't just a coworker who had seduced Daniel's wife. He was a man with secrets. Daniel flipped through the pages, each revelation more damning than the last. Unpaid debts, shady business dealings, and whispers of misconduct at his previous job. Jason wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a manipulator who left destruction in his wake. Daniel smiled grimly. If Jason wanted to play games, he'd pick the wrong opponent. Lily's new life isn't what it seems. Meanwhile, Lily's affair with Jason had taken a turn. The honeymoon phase of their clandestine relationship had faded, and cracks were beginning to show. Jason, once charming and attentive, had grown distant. His possessiveness surfaced in sharp remarks and suspicious glances, and his carefree facade slipped whenever Lily questioned his erratic behavior. One night, as they sat in Jason's apartment, Lily tried to bring up the future. "Where do you see us going?" she asked tentatively. Jason shrugged, barely looking up from his phone. "I don't know, Lily. Can we not talk about this right now?" Lily felt her stomach drop. She had sacrificed everything for this man. Her marriage, her stability, and now he couldn't even be bothered to have a conversation. Daniel's transformation begins while Lily grappled with doubts. Daniel set his plan into motion. He wasn't just going to expose Jason. He was going to rebuild himself. First, he focused on his appearance. He joined a gym, hired a personal trainer, and pushed himself harder than he ever had before. Every drop of sweat was a reminder of what he was fighting for, a life that didn't revolve around Lily's betrayal. Next, Daniel updated his wardrobe. Gone were the days of casual polos and worn-out jeans. He invested in tailored suits and sharp casual wear, presenting himself as a man of confidence and purpose. But the transformation wasn't just physical. Daniel began attending networking events, reconnecting with old friends, and even signing up for public speaking classes to refine his presence. It wasn't long before people began to notice. At work, his colleagues complimented his newfound energy and professionalism. Friends who had initially reached out of pity now marveled at his growth. Sowing doubt as Daniel flourished, He took steps to undermine Jason and Lily's relationship. Using the evidence Matt had gathered, he crafted an anonymous email and sent it to Jason's boss. The email included details of Jason's misconduct, subtly suggesting that Jason's actions could reflect poorly on the company. It didn't take long for whispers to spread around Jason's workplace. Colleagues began to distance themselves, and his boss started scrutinizing his performance. At the same time, Daniel sent an envelope to Lily's mailbox. Inside were photos of Jason with another woman, a former girlfriend Matt had uncovered during his investigation. The note accompanying the photos was brief but pointed. "Are you sure you know the man you left everything for?" Lily's growing doubts when Lily opened the envelope. Her breath caught. She stared at the photos, her mind racing. The woman in the pictures was laughing with Jason, her hand lingering on his arm in a way that felt all too familiar. Lily confronted Jason that evening, holding up the photos. "Who is she?" Jason's eyes narrowed as he took the photos from her. "Where did you get these?" "That's not the point," Lily snapped. "You told me I was the only one." Jason scoffed, tossing the photos onto the table. "This is ridiculous, Lily. She's just a friend. Someone's obviously trying to mess with us." But Lily couldn't shake the unease growing in her chest. Jason's reaction wasn't one of innocence. It was defensive, dismissive, and eerily familiar. An unexpected encounter 2 weeks later, Daniel attended a charity gala hosted by a mutual friend. He knew there was a chance Lily and Jason might be there, but he felt prepared. He wasn't the same man she had left. Sure enough, as Daniel mingled with the crowd, he spotted Lily across the room. She looked radiant, but her smile faltered when their eyes met. She hadn't expected to see him there, and certainly not like this. Jason was by her side, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain composed. Lily approached him cautiously, leaving Jason momentarily distracted by a conversation. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice tinged with surprise and something else, regret. "You look different." "Thanks," Daniel replied coolly. "It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not carrying someone else's baggage." The sting in his words was deliberate, and Lily flinched. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice wavering. "But you did," Daniel said evenly. "And now, I've moved on." Before Lily could respond, Jason reappeared, his eyes narrowing as he noticed them talking. "Everything okay here?" Jason asked, his tone clipped. "Everything's fine," Daniel replied with a polite smile. "I was just catching up with my ex-wife." Jason's jaw tightened, but he didn't press further. Daniel excused himself, walking away with a sense of satisfaction. The encounter had gone exactly as he had hoped. The next phase that night, Daniel reflected on the confrontation. Seeing Lily again had stirred up old feelings, but it also reaffirmed his resolve. He wasn't doing this for her, or for Jason. He was doing it for himself. As he sat at his desk, Daniel began sketching out the next phase of his plan. If Jason thought he could escape the consequences of his actions, he was sorely mistaken. Daniel's confrontation with Lily and Jason at the charity gala had been a pivotal moment. Seeing her hesitation, the flicker of regret in her eyes, and Jason's growing discomfort affirmed that his plan was working. But Daniel knew that the cracks he'd created needed to be widened. If Jason and Lily thought they could walk away from their betrayal without consequence, they were about to face a reality they never expected. A growing rift after the gala, Lily couldn't shake the unease that had taken root in her mind. Seeing Daniel, confident, composed, and thriving, had unnerved her. He didn't seem broken as she had expected. If anything, he looked stronger. Jason, on the other hand, had been agitated since that night. His charm had turned sour, his temper flaring over minor inconveniences. "Why are you so worked up about him?" Jason snapped one evening after noticing Lily staring out the window, lost in thought. "I'm not worked up," Lily replied defensively. "It's just, seeing him like that, it made me realize." "Realize what?" Jason interrupted, his tone sharp. "That maybe I made a mistake," she said quietly, almost to herself. Jason's eyes darkened. "A mistake? Really? You think going back to him is going to fix anything? I didn't say that, Lily shot back, her voice rising. But you haven't exactly made me feel like this was the right choice either. Jason slammed his glass down on the table, the sound echoing through the room. You made your decision, Lily. Stop looking back. But even as Jason stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she had gambled everything and lost. Daniel's next move, while Lily and Jason's relationship began to unravel, Daniel was quietly executing the next phase of his plan. With Matt's help, he had gathered more damning evidence of Jason's misconduct, including documents linking him to fraudulent business deals and falsified expense reports at work. Daniel knew that Jason's charm and arrogance had helped him avoid consequences in the past, but this time would be different. Armed with an anonymous tip, Daniel sent the evidence to Jason's employer. The fallout was swift. Within a week, Jason's company launched an internal investigation. His co-workers distanced themselves, whispers spreading about the allegations. Jason, once the office's golden boy, now found himself under a cloud of suspicion. The turning point one evening, as Lily scrolled through her messages, she received an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "The truth about Jason." Curiosity and a growing sense of dread compelled her to open it. Inside, she found the same evidence Daniel had sent to Jason's employer: fraudulent transactions, questionable business dealings, and even a record of a past lawsuit that Jason had never mentioned. Lily's hands shook as she read through the documents. The man she had left her marriage for wasn't just flawed. He was a liar and a manipulator. That night, she confronted Jason with the email. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, throwing the printed documents onto the table. Jason barely glanced at them before scoffing. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" Lily shot back. "Is it true?" Jason's silence was damning. "You used me," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "You lied to me, didn't you?" Jason's jaw tightened. "I didn't use you, Lily. Don't make this bigger than it is." "Bigger than it is?" Lily repeated, her voice rising. "I gave up everything for you. My husband, my home, my life. And now I find out you've been lying to me this entire time?" Jason's face twisted in anger. "I didn't force you to leave him, Lily. You made that choice on your own. Stop blaming me for your regrets." The argument escalated until Jason stormed out, leaving Lily alone in their apartment. A surprise encounter the next day, Lily found herself wandering the streets aimlessly. She didn't know where else to go, but her feet seemed to lead her to familiar places. Before she realized it, she was standing outside the cafe where she and Daniel used to spend Sunday mornings. As if fate had intervened, Daniel walked out of the cafe just as she arrived. He froze for a moment when he saw her, his expression unreadable. "Daniel," Lily said softly, her voice laced with emotion. "What are you doing here, Lily?" he asked, his tone neutral. "I don't know," she admitted. I needed someone to talk to." Daniel sighed, glancing at the coffee shop behind him before nodding. "Fine, let's talk." They sat at a small table on the cafe's patio, the tension between them palpable. "I made a mistake," Lily began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was leaving for something better, but you weren't," Daniel finished for her, his voice cold. Lily flinched but didn't deny it. "I just wanted to feel something again," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "And now I've lost everything." Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "You didn't lose everything, Lily. You threw it away. There's a difference." Her tears spilled over, but Daniel's heart didn't soften. The pain she had caused him was still too fresh, too raw. "I don't know how to fix this," Lily admitted, her voice cracking. "You can't," Daniel said simply. "Some things can't be undone." A game of chess. As Lily grappled with the reality of her choices, Jason's situation worsened. The investigation at his company uncovered more evidence of wrongdoing, leading to his suspension. His financial troubles mounted, and his confidence, once his greatest asset, began to falter. Jason suspected that Daniel was behind his unraveling, but he couldn't prove it. The knowledge ate at him, fueling his anger. One evening, Jason called Lily, his tone desperate. "I need you," he said. "I'm being set up, and I can't fight this alone." But Lily's voice was distant, her resolve hardened by the revelations she had uncovered. "I can't do this anymore, Jason," she said. "We're done." Jason's response was venomous. "You think you can just walk away from me? After everything I've done for you?" "You didn't do anything for me," Lily replied, her voice steady. "All you did was take." She hung up, her hands trembling. But for the first time in months, she felt a sliver of clarity. The tables turned as Jason's world crumbled. Daniel's continued to rise. His career flourished, his social circle expanded, and his newfound confidence drew admiration from everyone around him. At his next work event, Daniel was approached by a woman named Clara, a colleague he had always admired from afar. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt a spark of genuine connection. But even as he moved forward, Daniel knew the game wasn't over. Jason wasn't the type to go down quietly, and Lily's regret was a reminder of the fragile balance between justice and closure. As Daniel drove home that night, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We're not done, Daniel. You'll regret this." Daniel smirked, his grip tightening on the wheel. "Let's see about that." Jason sat alone in his car, parked outside a dingy motel on the outskirts of the city. The dashboard light illuminated his weary, bloodshot eyes as he clutched a nearly empty bottle of whiskey. His life was unraveling faster than he could grasp, and the once confident charmer was now a man consumed by desperation and anger. Daniel Carter. The name burned in his mind like a curse. Jason was convinced that Daniel had orchestrated everything. His suspension at work, the rumors tarnishing his reputation, and even Lily's sudden departure. Jason's phone buzzed on the passenger seat. He hesitated before picking it up. It was his boss. "We've concluded our investigation," the voice on the other end said coldly. "Your actions have put the company at significant risk. We'll be terminating your employment effective immediately." Jason's grip on the phone tightened. "You're making a mistake. Someone's setting me up." "Save it," his boss snapped. "Your severance will be sent to you, but we don't want to hear from you again." The line went dead. Jason screamed, throwing the phone against the windshield. The cracks in his life widened into chasms. Lily's journey to accountability across town. Lily sat in her sister's apartment, scrolling through job postings on her laptop. Since leaving Jason, she had been piecing together the wreckage of her life. Therapy was helping her confront the choices that led to her betrayal of Daniel, but the guilt still lingered like a storm cloud over her head. Her sister, Mia, walked in, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You've been staring at that screen all day. Take a break." "I can't afford to," Lily replied, closing the laptop. "I need to find a job. I need to fix everything." Mia sat down beside her. "You don't have to do this alone, you know. Have you thought about reaching out to Daniel? Maybe just to apologize properly?" "I've already spoken to him," Lily said softly, "but I don't think I can ever make it right. And he's better off without me." Mia gave her a sympathetic look. "You're taking responsibility, which is more than a lot of people would do. That's a start." Lily nodded, her determination growing. She couldn't undo the past, but she could rebuild herself, one step at a time. The first strike. Jason wasn't ready to admit defeat. That evening, he sat in his apartment, surrounded by empty beer cans and papers strewn across the floor. He sifted through the chaos, piecing together a plan of revenge. He hadn't seen Lily in weeks, and her silence gnawed at him. His calls went unanswered, and he was certain she was staying with her sister. But it wasn't just Lily he wanted to punish, it was Daniel. Jason had always been skilled at manipulating people, and he still had one weapon left: information. He remembered overhearing Lily mention an incident from Daniel's past, a business deal that had gone sideways years ago, leaving lingering questions about Daniel's judgment. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant seeds of doubt. The next day, Jason reached out to one of Daniel's colleagues under the guise of concern. "I don't want to cause any trouble," Jason said over the phone, his voice smooth and deliberate. But I've heard some things about Daniel's past. You might want to look into it. A new connection meanwhile, Daniel had been spending more time with Clara, the colleague he'd reconnected with at the work event weeks ago. Their growing friendship had been a balm for his wounded heart, and for the first time since Lily's betrayal, he felt a sense of hope. One evening, they sat on the patio of Clara's favorite restaurant, sipping wine as the city lights twinkled around them. "I have to admit," Clara said with a smile, "you're not what I expected." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. "When I first heard about everything you'd been through, I figured you'd be bitter, closed off. But you've surprised me." Daniel chuckled. "Let's just say it's been a journey. I'm still figuring it out." Clara leaned forward, her expression softening. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Daniel. And whoever ends up with you will be lucky." For a moment, Daniel felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. The trap is set. Jason's rumors began to circulate at Daniel's workplace. While they were vague and lacked substantial evidence, they were enough to raise questions among his colleagues. Daniel noticed the change in their behavior. Sideways glances, whispered conversations that stopped when he entered the room. One afternoon, his boss called him into the office. "Daniel, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but I've been hearing some concerns about a past deal of yours. Is there something I should know?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew exactly where this was coming from. "It's nothing but a smear campaign," Daniel said calmly. "I'm sure I can clear it up." His boss nodded, but looked unconvinced. "I hope so. Keep me in the loop." As Daniel left the office, his mind raced. Jason was clearly behind this, and it was time to put an end to his games once and for all. The showdown that evening, Daniel called Lily. "I need to know something," he said as soon as she picked up. "Okay," Lily replied cautiously. "Did you ever tell Jason anything about my past, specifically about the business deal from years ago?" Lily hesitated. "I might have mentioned it once. Why?" "Because he's using it against me," Daniel said, his voice cold. "He's spreading rumors to sabotage my career." "I didn't mean for this to happen," Lily said, guilt evident in her tone. "I know," Daniel replied, "but I need your help to stop him." Lily was silent for a moment before answering. "Tell me what you need." Turning the tables the next day, Daniel and Lily worked together to gather evidence against Jason. Using Lily's knowledge of Jason's behavior and Daniel's resources, they compiled a dossier that exposed Jason's lies, manipulations, and financial misconduct in exhaustive detail. Daniel also reached out to Matt, who still had connections in private security. Matt unearthed more dirt on Jason, including proof that he had falsified records to cover up his own failures at work. With everything in hand, Daniel approached his boss, presenting the evidence that not only cleared his name but painted Jason as a desperate and vindictive liar. "This is solid," his boss said, flipping through the file. "I'll make sure this goes no further." Jason's attempt to undermine Daniel backfired spectacularly. The evidence Daniel provided made its way to Jason's former employer, further tarnishing his already ruined reputation. Lily, too, took a stand. She confronted Jason one final time, making it clear that she wanted nothing more to do with him. "You can't keep blaming everyone else for your failures," she said, her voice steady. "You've done this to yourself." Jason, left with no allies and no options, finally retreated. A new chapter with Jason out of the picture, Daniel focused on rebuilding his life. His relationship with Clara blossomed into something deeper, and he found himself looking forward to the future instead of dwelling on the past. One evening, as he and Clara strolled through the park, Daniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you," he said, squeezing her hand. "For what?" Clara asked, smiling. "For reminding me that life goes on," Daniel replied. And for the first time, he truly believed it. The aftermath of Jason's collapse rippled through the lives of everyone involved. For Daniel, it felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel. The weight of betrayal and anger that had consumed him was lifting, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. But even as he moved forward, he knew there was one final chapter to close before he could truly leave the past behind. Jason's final play. Jason wasn't the type to go quietly. Days after his failed smear campaign, he reappeared, reaching out to Lily with a cryptic message. "You owe me. Don't forget that." Lily read the text with a sinking feeling in her chest. Despite her resolve to distance herself, Jason still found ways to exert his control. She showed the message to Daniel, her voice shaking. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Daniel studied the message, his jaw tightening. "No, he won't. But we're not going to let him drag us back into his mess." "Do you think he's dangerous?" Lily asked hesitantly. "I think he's desperate," Daniel replied. "And desperate people can be unpredictable." Jason's reckoning determined to end Jason's interference once and for all. Daniel made a bold move. With Matt's help, he tipped off law enforcement about Jason's fraudulent activities, providing the extensive evidence they had compiled. The authorities acted swiftly, investigating Jason for financial crimes and workplace misconduct. The walls began closing in on him, and soon, Jason was facing legal action for his fraudulent schemes. Daniel kept his distance from the fallout, but he couldn't ignore the satisfaction of seeing Jason brought to justice. Lily's redemption. For Lily, the months following Jason's downfall were a period of profound self-reflection. Therapy became her sanctuary, helping her confront not only her betrayal of Daniel, but also the patterns in her life that had led her to make such devastating choices. One afternoon, as she sat in her therapist's office, Lily shared a thought that had been weighing on her. "I ruined the best thing I ever had," she said quietly. "Daniel didn't deserve what I did to him." "And yet, you're taking responsibility now," her therapist said gently. "That's a sign of growth. You can't change the past, but you can choose what kind of person you want to be moving forward." Lily nodded, her resolve strengthening. She couldn't undo the damage she had caused, but she could rebuild herself into someone worthy of respect, someone who wouldn't make the same mistakes again. A new opportunity for Daniel. Meanwhile, Daniel's life continued to flourish. His professional reputation, once under threat, was now stronger than ever. His colleagues admired his resilience and leadership, and he had earned a promotion that came with both greater responsibilities and greater visibility within the company. Outside of work, his relationship with Clara deepened. She became his confidant and partner, someone who reminded him of the possibilities that lay ahead rather than the pain of the past. One evening, Clara surprised Daniel with a proposition. "There's a non-profit organization I've been supporting," she said as they shared dinner. "They help people who've experienced betrayal and loss rebuild their lives. I think you'd be amazing at mentoring people through that." Daniel hesitated. The idea of sharing his story on such a public level felt daunting, but it also resonated deeply. "I'll think about it," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. A letter from Lily. Months later, as Daniel sifted through his mail, he found an envelope with Lily's handwriting on it. His first instinct was to toss it aside, but curiosity got the better of him. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Daniel, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, and I don't expect you to, but I needed to say this. I'm sorry, not just for the betrayal, but for underestimating you. I thought leaving would make me happy, but it only showed me how much I lost. You didn't just survive what I did to you, you thrived. Watching you grow into someone stronger and more confident has been both humbling and inspiring. I've started rebuilding my life, and I owe that to you, for showing me what real strength looks like. Thank you for being the man I didn't deserve. I wish you nothing but happiness. Lily." Daniel read the letter twice, his emotions a mix of sadness and closure. Lily's words didn't erase the pain she had caused, but they gave him the final piece of closure he hadn't realized he needed. A step toward the future. That evening, Daniel and Clara attended a gala hosted by the nonprofit Clara had mentioned. As Daniel mingled with the guests, he felt a sense of purpose growing within him. During the event, Clara leaned in and whispered, "I think this is your calling." Daniel smiled, his hand resting lightly on hers. "Maybe it is." The gala ended with a speech from a man who had rebuilt his life after years of hardship. As Daniel listened, he realized that sharing his story wasn't just about helping others. It was about solidifying his own transformation. Jason's life had spiraled into chaos. With legal battles looming and his reputation in tatters, he retreated from the public eye. He no longer had the power to manipulate or intimidate, and for the first time in years, he was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. Though Daniel no longer kept tabs on Jason, he knew one thing for certain. The man who had once caused him so much pain no longer held any power over him. The final reflection one evening, as Daniel and Clara sat on the balcony of his home, watching the city lights, Clara turned to him with a thoughtful smile. "You've come a long way," she said. "So have you," Daniel replied, his gaze meeting hers. Clara reached for his hand. "Do you ever think about what might have been? If things had gone differently with Lily?" Daniel considered the question for a moment before shaking his head. "I used to, but now I think everything happened for a reason. It brought me here." Clara's smile widened. "And here is a pretty good place to be." Daniel nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The pain of betrayal had once consumed him, but it had also shaped him, pushing him to grow in ways he never imagined. As he looked toward the horizon, Daniel felt ready to embrace whatever came next.